What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Brenden Schaeffer Fantasy Football channel. We're looking to do a 10-minute mock here. Got a little bit of time before my radio show kicks off, and I don't think I've done anything on this channel from the 1.7 in 12-team PPRs, so that's what we're going to run here as a mock draft real quick. Going to try to burn through this one, maybe a little less analysis and me talking around myself than I usually do in these videos. But make sure you hit subscribe on this channel and like on this video, and let me know in the comments below what type of content you would like to see moving forward as we get kind of closer to the end of the mock draft season and more into regular season and weekly preparation for our leagues. Let's go ahead and rock and roll with this one. We're going to go 1 QB, 2 RB, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 flex. 5 bench spots here. Drafting from Sleeper for those who ask, hey, what's the platform you use? It is Sleeper.com. They're not a sponsor. Not yet, but maybe someday. Okay, at the 7th spot, this is a pretty typical start other than seeing Tyreek Hill go before Kelsey and Eckler. I feel like a lot of times if you're at that 6th spot, you're maybe choosing between Hill and one of the leftovers from this, or maybe a Cooper Kupp sort of situation. Bijan Robinson in that range. Too early for tight end, too early for quarterback. So we're really just going to settle in between the top wide receiver that I consider on the board, which is Cooper Kupp, and the top running back on the board, which is Bijan Robinson. I feel like there's a tier break after 8, Bijan and Cooper Kupp being the 2 guys that fall within that. It's really a matter of preference here in full PPR, whether you want to go with wide receiver or running back at this point in the draft. My tendency is to go wide receiver early, and I like Cooper Kupp. I don't think I'd be able to pass him up if I had the selection at the 1.7 in a real league, just because it's really, really fun having Cooper Kupp on your team when things are going his way. His target share is unbelievable. Thinking back to a couple of years ago when he had his true breakout season, he was fantastic. There's not really anybody else on the Rams that I think is going to threaten for that 30% that Cooper Kupp is going to demand. So, yeah, it's going to be another big year for Kupp as long as he's healthy and Matthew Stafford is healthy as well. Checking out the 2nd round, we're at the 2.6. We hate to see Amon-Ra St. Brown gone because that would be our auto pick in the middle of the 2nd round. But we do have another guy that we like, and it makes us feel better about the fact that we didn't go running back in the 1st round. Tony Pollard, I've got him ranked above Josh Jacobs. I've got him certainly ranked above Jonathan Taylor. And even I would take him above Saquon Barkley, to be totally honest with you, as well as, honestly, Derrick Henry. I'm pretty high on Tony Pollard. He was one of my biggest draft targets last year in the middle of the draft, round 6, round 7. I just love him for PPR, and now Zeke isn't even there in Dallas to interfere with the greatness that is Tony Pollard. He's just an explosive player. He doesn't have to fit the mold of a classic bruising running back to do the things that he does well, and the things that he does well work well for PPR. So we like Tony Pollard in the middle of the 2nd round. Looking into the 3rd round, kind of an interesting spot to be when I'm drafting from the later portions. I know some of the receivers that I like to draft around the turn, at that 3-4 turn, but here are a few picks before that. The board lists some guys that aren't usually available to me at the end of the round. At quarterback, Lamar Jackson, a little bit interesting. Jahmyr Gibbs, if I want to go running back, because I did miss out on Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I like that Lions offense this year. So Jahmyr Gibbs would be the pick, I think, for me at running back. I'd choose him over Joe Mixon, Breece Hall. Kenneth Walker I like, but everybody on this list, it's easily Gibbs for me in a PPR setting. Mark Andrews did go late 2nd, so he's not an option here for us. And it's just a little bit early, I think, for the wide receivers. I like the value as these guys get closer to the turn. We're going to take Jahmyr Gibbs and kind of watch a little bit. Calvin Ridley, 3.10. Maybe I'm splitting hairs. That's only 3 or 4 picks different than me sitting over here. Keenan Allen, I think he's a good pick in the 4th, but is he as valuable in the mid-3rd, especially when we're able to lock up a couple of running backs that very similar builds, honestly, in terms of the roles that I expect Pollard and Gibbs to have on their respective teams. They're not going to necessarily run between the tackles and just be those explosive guys in that regard. You get them into space, though, and I think both of them can make things happen. That's what I want in a PPR league. Yes, I'm paying up a little bit for those types of running backs. Normally, it's nicer to get them in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, where people usually say, oh, that's the dead zone. I say, no, that's the PPR zone. But people are getting wise to these types of running backs being valuable. It could be a little bit of a risk that backfires on us to go with Pollard and Gibbs in rounds 2 and 3, but I just like the players and the talent so much that I feel pretty good about doing it here. Looking at the 4th round, we got to make a decision relatively quickly. We don't really need running back, so I'm going to kind of force a pick at wide receiver here. But I'm not anti-DJ Moore by any respects. I just think he's a better pick late 4th, early 5th with where he's listed, especially on the sleeper ADP. But it felt a little bit early for me to go Justin Fields. and maybe we don't get Justin Fields coming back. He goes at the 5.3. That is an option if you really want to chance it. Maybe you take Fields first and hope that DJ Moore falls. It depends on what platform you're drafting on. We're doing it here on Sleeper. It's hard to be able to stack those two Bears in rounds 4 and 5 unless you're a little closer to the turn. I think you got to be at the 4-10 or 5-3, that kind of angle, which would be the third overall pick in the draft, or the second or the first, to get you close enough to that 4-5 turn to make it happen. But I believe still that DJ Moore can be the A.J. Brown for Justin Fields. So I'm looking for a step forward. Fields has to find more accuracy downfield consistently to get the touchdowns that DJ Moore deserves, but he is that kind of wide receiver talent. So we like DJ Moore fine in the 4th. It's just not explosive value like we sometimes can get when we're not kind of nestled here right into the middle of the draft. At this middle of the draft, I still feel like we're getting a good value on Christian Watson in the middle of the 5th, so we're going to take him. He's a guy that I take a lot in this range. I just think the upside is there when you're not having to rely upon Christian Watson and the Green Bay passing offense as like the wide receiver 1 or 2 in my lineup. That might be a little bit of a bit much to trust Christian Watson to have the volume and like just the consistency of the Green Bay offense under a new QB. But if Jordan Love is even adequate, I think Christian Watson is explosive if he's a flex for your lineup. So we like him as a flex when we can also look at feeling very secure in where we're at RB. So a good start for this draft. I don't mind the 1.7 draft position, at least as of this moment. We basically have handled in this format what we need to do at running back and wide receiver, as well as the flex position. So could we look tight end? Perhaps, but I'm just not too enthused by the value on guys like Goddard, Freiermuth in that range. And the top 7 quarterbacks are off the board, the last of which to me is generally Trevor Lawrence. We see Herbert falling a little bit in this example of the draft. I always want to be stronger in PPR at wide receiver than I am at running back. So that's going to lead me to go probably Tyler Lockett here. I like him a little bit more than I do some of these other guys in the range. George Pickens is interesting, but I trust the quarterback situation in Seattle a little bit more. I trust just the consistency year over year of Tyler Lockett in Seattle. I know it's possible that we see Jackson, Smith, and Jigba kind of hone in on a little bit of the Tyler Lockett target share, but I also feel like Lockett is a good enough talent in and of himself that as long as he's getting snaps and seeing the field, which I expect to be the case, he's a good veteran for that roster. I think he's still going to have at least one more good fantasy season in him. And as a bench bat, it just doesn't hurt to have. So I feel good about where we're at with that. Speaking of Smith and Jigba, here's near the top of the board here. I love the wide receivers in round 7. It's kind of a mental note that I'd really like to be able to invest in wide receiver in round 7, especially if I'm here at the middle of the round. Because JSN, if I hadn't gone Lockett, don't want to double up on Seattle, but he would be an option. Addison, Jahan Dotson, those are the 3 bona fide options for me. And I think running back value is insane here. Like, if you could stock a roster with all round 7 guys, I would go to battle with Javonte Williams, James Cook, and the 3 running backs that I just mentioned. At this point, it's like, who can you not live without? And to me, it's Jordan Addison because I just think he's got the highest upside, which I realize I could be wrong about. Like, Jahan Dotson has potentially got a path to wide receiver 1 in Washington, but the talent of Jordan Addison is very tantalizing, and so I just had to hit the button on him. Makes me a little weaker at running back because I usually like to get a Javonte Williams or a James Cook or a David Montgomery or an Alexander Madison kind of in this range here, and I didn't get any of those guys. But because I drafted 2 running backs early, I feel like I'm allowed to just attack aggressively the wide receiver position in the mid-rounds and feel pretty good about where we're at as a result. Because of where we're at, we're just going to be waiting on tight end. The values have really dropped off at this point in the draft. We're going to wait on quarterback as well. We may take a shot on Anthony Richardson if it ends up being a nice time to do so. But for now, we're just trying to pick up guys for the bench that are going to potentially have trade value during the season. I know it's a kind of a backwards way to think about it, but I want guys with upside that if they hit on that value, I'm either thrilled to put them in my lineup or I am thrilled to be able to trade them, package them with another adequate piece for a great one. And Jahan Dotson ends up falling to us in the 8th, so it's a pretty easy button click for us on him. Zay Flowers goes a couple of picks later, and I really do like Zay Flowers. Gabe Davis I really like as well, but Dotson is just a little bit higher for me than both of those guys, so we feel great about being able to land him as our wide receiver 6 in this situation. Yeah, we don't need any more wide receivers on our bench, but the ones that we have, I think there's a chance that all 6 of them end up within the top, let's say, I'm not going to say 24. That might be a little aggressive, but top 30 in fantasy, I think is absolutely within range for all 6 of the guys that we have. Running back is now a need because we've only got 2 of them. So let's go ahead with another satellite back who could happen into some more opportunity. That's Zach Charbonnet. This is Zach Charbonnet territory for me. I may be overestimating what his role is going to be as an immediate rookie in that Seattle offense, but they drafted him with some pretty hefty draft capital, and they love to run the football there. So I think Zach Charbonnet is going to see the field. And Ken Walker runs with such reckless abandon that you don't like to project injuries for guys, but there's a chance that he gets hurt, right? And you just end up needing to have somebody step in, and Charbonnet could certainly be the one to do that. We want to ramp this up a little bit. I've already missed my boat on saying a 10-minute draft, but we might be able to get it done in 15 here. Let's see. We do know we need quarterback and tight end before this draft comes to a conclusion, and there's only 3 picks left. You don't have to draft a quarterback or a tight end. Like if I'm going to say I'm streaming Sam Howell, so nobody's going to draft him, and so I'm just not going to draft that position, you could do that on Sleeper. I love the freedom that they give you. But at the same time, it probably makes sense to try and fill those positions. And the guy that I like is at the very top of the tight end list, so he's not going to get back to us if we wait even longer. Dalton Kincaid, you're on the roster. I like the rookie. I like young players that have a potential to outperform their ADP, and rookies tend to do that because people just don't know what to expect from them. And so there's just a hesitation from the general community to take a risk on guys that they've not seen it before at the NFL level. I don't really care that I haven't seen it with Kincaid. I like what I hear and read about what his opportunity is going to look like. In this round, it's a pretty easy choice for me. I'm going to go running back to get the 4th one on our roster because, as we mentioned, we have 6 wideouts. It's Tank Bigsby or it's Jaylen Warren for me at this point in the draft. I just don't really think anybody else. Yeah, Elijah Mitchell maybe, because that's also an explosive offense, and you might be projecting a little bit that if CMC misses time, Elijah Mitchell would be a great smash. But also, he's kind of injury-prone in and of himself. Between Tank Bigsby and Jaylen Warren, you can honestly flip a coin. I should do an entire video on just the decision between these two guys because I see their roles as rather similar, and it might be a bet on the offense that you take. But I'm going to also bet against Najee Harris a little bit by going Jaylen Warren here. That's going to be the 4th running back on my roster. For a 12-team league, that is plenty, in my opinion, when you're as strong as we are at wide receiver. DJ Moore, not the strongest wide receiver 2 that I've ever had when doing these mocks, but when you go further down the list to see that Watson is your 3, Lockett's your 4, Addison your 5, and Jahan Dotson your 6, those are all starting caliber wide receivers, in my opinion, by midseason in PPR. So we are thrilled with the way this draft has played out at that position. And I've said his name a lot. Last time I did a mock, I drafted Derek Carr with the last pick. I tend to wait on quarterback because there's just too much good value in those mid-rounds for me this year on guys that have upside. So I'm just going to punt the quarterback position most of the time. That's what I do here. I took Derek Carr the last time because I had Olave on my roster, and I was kind of savvy and keen on that stack in New Orleans. But Sam Howell is the guy that I like as a QB streamer. Just look at his week 1 matchup. That's really all I should have to say about that. So just real quick, wrapping this up so I can keep it as a brief video. If you like the content and being able to look over the draft board here on Sleeper and go, all right, that's good stuff. I wonder, just kind of pause the video here if you want to be able to take a full look at what we're dealing with. But I'm going to pull this right up here so everybody can see what my roster looks like. There we go. We can get almost the entire roster on the page. Quarterback Sam Howell, yeah, whatever. We're punting the position, and he's got some upside. Ron Rivera seems to like him, so good enough for me, I guess. Tony Pollard and Jahmyr Gibbs, love both those guys for PPR. It's not as savvy to take them both if it's a standard league or even a half PPR setting, but they are both very adept pass catchers, and I think they're going to be used that way by their respective NFL teams. Cooper Kupp, say no more. Just need Matthew Stafford to be healthy to get that connection brewing. DJ Moore is a guy that I really want to have on some teams because I believe in the talent. And even though I go through these mock drafts and sometimes I kind of overlook him in favor of better guys in that round, I find that here from the 1.7, it might just be DJ Moore territory for me in the 4th if he's ending up falling to that spot. Christian Watson as a flex. But we've also got Tyler Lockett, Addison, Jahan Dotson. I mean, this is one of the best mock drafts that I've done. I kind of find that, by best, I mean, I'm getting my targets. Maybe I'm wrong about all these guys, but at least I can go through and start the season knowing, hey, if I have a bad fantasy season with this group, it's because my evaluations were just bad on the players that I decided to back. But there's nothing sweeter than coming out of a draft and going, yep, I got only targets on my team. There's nobody that I'm sitting there going, man, why did I draft this guy? Don't ever put yourself in that position, fantasy players. Just get your guys. Like, it's fantasy football. It's supposed to be for fun. Maybe you're playing for money. Maybe you're not. But at the end of the day, root for the guys that you want to be able to pull for. And the way you get to root for them is by having them on your fantasy roster. And the way you can guarantee having them on your fantasy roster is simply by drafting them. So we love where we're at with the wide receivers. And running back, I feel pretty good about having Jahmyr Gibbs and Pollard off the top. And then Jaylen Warren to go along with Charbonnet off the bench. So let me know what you think of this draft. Let me know, where would you like to see me draft from next as we continue with the mock drafts here on Sleeper on the Brenden Schaeffer Fantasy Football channel. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you next time on the channel. Peace.